Welcome to the latest Notes from the Control Tower, and in this episode I'm going to discuss patch 2.1.11.1 and modifications to the game. Hello there, and welcome to this latest edition of Notes from the Control Tower. And later today, this being January the 19th, 2022, update 2.1.11.1 will be deployed, and as described on this webpage that's displayed, there will be some minor changes going through. Well, I thought they were quite interesting changes, so I thought I'd step through them for you. Let's have a look at the first one. Here it is. Aircraft balance changes, always an interesting topic. Large caliber machine guns now have the same characteristics in specialist and stock configurations of the following three aircraft. Well, who knew there was a difference? And what was that difference? Let's go and have a look. So here we are looking at the first of the aircraft, the Grumman XFY-1 and I'm just going to pop it into stock configuration by means of being in upgrades up here and pressing the stop button here, and the large caliber machine guns will be the 12.7s. So if we look at the characteristics, we can see specifications: damage per second 46, rate of fire 700, and effective fire range 1803 feet. Okay, so if we remember those, let's pop it into specialist configuration. What's the difference? Damage per second 38, range of fire 700, and effective fire range 1640. And on this particular aircraft, it just looks as if the buff that was meant to go through on the 12.7mm machine guns simply didn't. I don't know if this is because they're M2s and they got missed out, but well spotted, somebody. Whoever let the World of Warplanes team know about this has really eagle-eyed, or if the World of Warplanes team spotted it themselves. A good job. I certainly didn't know about this. Let's just go back and go into stock configuration just to remind ourselves. 46, 700, 1803, and specialist 38, 700, 1640. Okay, so that's definitely a correction that needed to go through on the specialist configuration of this particular aircraft. So let's go to the next one. So here we are looking now at the heavy fighter, the P-38F Lightning. And here are the heavy machine guns, not the cannons. And this is in stock configuration already. Let's just have a look at the characteristics. 46, 700, 1803 there. And if we look at the specialist characteristics, we can see 45. That's an odd difference. 700 and 1798. Okay, those figures are slightly odd, but the point of the story is that they should be the same for both the stock and the specialist configurations. So that's going to get fixed. Let's have a look at the final aircraft. Finally, the Transport XFY-1, and it's in stock configuration already. Let's just hover over the large caliber machine guns, the 50 cals. We see 46, 700, 1803 there, and if we pop it into specialist, we'll see 38, 700, 1640. So again, this didn't receive the buff that it should have. So that needs correcting as well, and that's what this patch is going to do. That's good news. Right, so let's have a look at the other changes, and they're down here. First off, the Holiday Maneuvers event will finally be deactivated today. If you haven't got the Pogo, I'm afraid you've missed out. That said, I think probably some of us are getting a little tired of the Holiday Maneuvers event and would like to go back to normal flying. Corrected the description of the Convair XFY Pogo aircraft. Well, I've had a look in the interface. Trust me, I can't actually see what they're going to do. Probably I won't see what I'm going to do. I'll see what's been done until after the patch has been applied. As far as I could see, the name of the aircraft was correct and the description wasn't necessarily wrong. It's a very minor change as described in the notes for this patch. Fixed a bug that prevented you from seeing marks for destroyed ground and aerial targets on the Convair XFY-1 Pogo. I suppose somebody's probably noticed. Who counts how many aircraft and ground targets they destroyed, though? But maybe somebody's noticed that markers weren't appearing. Those are the kill marks. If you want to know about kill marks, I'll do a little bit of a section just after the discussing the patch, just so you know where to find them. And I'll point you to a resource where you can find out all you need to know about those. Fixed a bug due to which the interface wouldn't show notifications that certain crew skills have been activated. Hoorah! If this means that the special skills on some pilots, which should activate when you put the aircraft into the conditions that activate them, for instance, a dive on the E3 with Hans Weber, and other skills, and these will now appear, and they'll appear just above the panels on the left of your game, I will be very pleased, because obviously the World of Warplanes team have been saying for a long time that the skills actually do activate. It's just a bug with the display of the icon. But of course, without the icon being displayed, everybody just feels that they're possibly not getting what they should. They probably were. And of course, the other way round was always possible. The skill icon may have been displayed and the skill wasn't actually activated. And that could still be true. But anyway, that's a good change. That's going to be welcomed by everybody who's been irritated by the absence of this particular icon. And we move on. Change the additional characteristics of experimental bulk carriers. Well, they don't say what they're going to change them to, so in a moment what we'll do is we'll just take a snapshot of a fully configured experimental bulk carriers for periods 1, well, whichever periods they apply. At the moment I don't actually know, and we'll have to compare and contrast afterwards, and I'll do that later as well. Right, let's move on. So we've moved on into the depot by selecting the depot menu item up here, and then the equipment is made visible by selecting this button here. And here's some stock experimental bulk carriers. I only happen to have unapplied to aircraft a period 2 piece of equipment, and if we do as this dialog in the centre of the screen suggests, press the left Alt key, that's at the bottom of the dialog, you can then see what the equipment would look like when it's fully calibrated and fully enhanced. And I guess by additional characteristics in the patch notes, what is actually meant is the bonus characteristics, and I assume these are going to change. I also further assume that period 3 equipment, and if there is period 1 equipment for bulk carriers, I can't remember if there actually is or not, I'll confirm that a little bit later. I'm assuming that these characteristics are the same for all types of bulk carriers across all periods, and that they're going to be changed in some way. So when the patch has gone through, I'll do this again and we'll see what's changed. So now we've moved forward in time several hours. I've had a shower and a change of shirt, as you can see if you've been paying attention. And what we have here is a document with a table listing the characteristics of a set of period 2 experimental bulk carriers. On the left are the characteristics prior to this morning's patch, and on the right are the characteristics after this morning's patch. And it turns out, at least for the period 2 bulk carriers, it's not just a change to the additional characteristics that we're looking at here. Experimental bulk carriers worsen the accuracy of your guns, and prior to the patch this morning the maximum worsening was minus 11.3 and it's now just minus 10.6, so this is a buff to the equipment, and that's good news for people who like their guns to be as accurate as possible. Now the bonus characteristics come in 3 sets of 2, and an extra set becomes available each time you improve your equipment. So the first 2 characteristics, talking about the bottom 6 rows of this table now, and if we just get the mouse in place, we can see that these 2 characteristics here belong to improved equipment and they haven't changed. These 2 characteristics belong to advanced equipment and they also haven't changed, but there is a change for ultimate level equipment, and it's here. What previously was plus 3% firing range of forward firing offensive armament as a choice that you had has been replaced by another chance to cool down your weapons, which will give you 3 chances if you wish. One there, and one there to cool down your weapons. And I think that's pretty useful, and it's also much more consistent. And I suspect that I will be taking advantage of this extra chance to cool down the weapons whenever I employ these experimental bulk carriers on a plane. Now I'm assuming that the changes are consistent for all periods. I haven't actually checked. You may want to take a look and see if the characteristics are the same, and if there's any differences, perhaps you'd let me know. However, I think we've now covered this morning's patch in all the detail that I want to. So we'll move on and we'll talk about mod packs and modifications. What we're looking at here is the structure of my installation of World of Warplanes on my computer, but before we talk about this, let's just talk about the modifications that I have been using up until recently. Until recently I've been using extensively a mod pack called Hackerbase, which unfortunately has just been discontinued. Having said that, if you have a copy of the latest installation file for that mod pack, there is a way which you can continue to use it, which I'll discuss later. The other mod pack that I use, rather less so, is Dr. Sinister's, and I'm not aware of other mod packs. If you are, by all means let me know of them using a comment on this video. I also use a standalone mod without an installation file called My Precious. That's the one that produces the statistics in battle in the top left corner that those of you who watch my Twitch streams will know of. And there's also one modification from the Grandpa's collection that I use. That's for bullets and tracers. Now, why did I call that a collection? I call it a collection because there is no installation file. You have to put these mods in yourself by hand. And that's where a knowledge of the structure of the game on your computer is necessary. So let's talk about my structure. And here we can see that I've installed the game on my C drive. You may not have. Bear that in mind as I continue this explanation. Furthermore, I've installed it under a folder called World of Warplanes, logically enough, but not necessarily the choice you will have made. And underneath that, the important folder, so far as modifications is concerned, is ResMods. So let's go in there. Now, you may only have one folder here. It should be numbered in a way that corresponds with the latest version of the game. Now, we had a patch this morning which was 2.1.11.1, and there's a folder. And if we drop inside that, we can see that it has nothing but a README file. And that means that I have no mods on the game as it stands. However, if we look at the preceding folder, we can see quite a lot of structure. 6 folders, 3 files there. And those are files which relate to all the mods that I've been using. So it probably won't surprise you to know that the name of the game here is to try and get this structure under here. So we'll talk about that next. Before I continue, a word of warning. If everything that you've just seen is gobbledygook to you, it doesn't mean anything because you don't know about the file system of your Windows computer. I'm not going to explain that to you, and you will need to have at least a reasonable appreciation of what you've been looking at. Now, I expect most of you have, but if you haven't, I'm going to recommend that you don't play World of Warplanes with mods until at least you have learned about the file system in Windows, because otherwise you could make mistakes and you'll probably find at least your mods won't work and you'll be frustrated. Worse, you'll do something which actually damages your installation and you won't be able to play World of Warplanes. So do bear that in mind. With that said, what we have here now on the left is still the World of Warplanes installation on my C drive. But for the purposes of this video, I've created a second folder which mimics the minimum that you will need for World of Warplanes installing mods. And that's on my D drive down here. It's a folder called WoWP for World of Warplanes. I've copied the executable for World of Warplanes here because that's necessary. Mod packs will generally check for this presence of this file, application file I should say, executable, before they'll run. I've put in the ResMods folder, which we talked about a few moments ago, and underneath there we can see that there's a folder 2.1.10.0. That's not going to work in this particular case, so we're going to create a new folder first. This is strictly for the purposes of demonstration. If you've updated your client, then this folder should already exist, and clearly as I've just created that, there'll be nothing there. We don't really need to pay attention to this folder here, and so we're just going to delete it, make it clearer and clean for you. Okay, let's just go up. So how would you go about installing a mod that doesn't have an installer? So let's start with the simplest of cases. I'm going to install a very popular mod called Who's the AI Bots? And this is the mod that puts an asterisk in front of bot names in various parts of your game client, including in battle. Makes it a little bit easier to identify the bots, and therefore the humans, of course. Links to this particular modification can be found on both the NA and EU World of Warplanes forums. And I've got it here, and I'm going to pull a copy of this from this temporary folder on my C drive to this false installation of World of Warplanes that I've created here. Let's just have a look inside this archival zip file if you prefer, and you'll recognize a familiar folder there. Let's just punch through all of the folders until we get to something interesting, and it's there. These are the files which will make this modification work. It doesn't matter what they are, you're not going to be doing anything with them. What you need is this structure under the 2.1.11.1 folder in your real installation, or in this case, my demonstration installation. So let's go back. Get to the right level. This is the one, it's just the first folder underneath 2.1.11.1, so let's copy that. And to get this to work in your installation of World of Warplanes, you need to find the real 2.1.11.1 folder. Here it is, and simply paste it. And the next time you start up your World of Warplanes client, you should find that you have that mod working. That is, you'll have an asterisk in front of your bot names. So I'll go through that process again, this time with the My Precious modification. Again, a link to that modification will be below the video. So we're just going to pull across this folder this time. And again, you can see this time there's a rather more complicated structure. And again, it's fairly simple. You want to get this structure underneath the relevant folder in your client. So I'm just going to highlight all of these, well, except for the check file. That's not necessary, although it wouldn't hurt to copy it across. Copy. Let's go back to the installation folder that interests us, 2.1.11.1, and let's paste that. And that was fine. You've now got two mods installed. However, some of you may have been thinking, well, what would have happened if the second modification had a file that was the same name as the first modification? Well, we'll deal with that topic in a moment. So now we'll look at installing a third modification. And this time we're going to use a mod pack with an installer. And here it is. It's Dr. Sinister's. Again, a link for this will be underneath the video if you're interested in having this. We're just going to run this, so this doesn't have to be dragged across to your World of Warplanes client folders. Let's just run it. Okay, let's just drag across that dialog box. There's an advisory from the creator of this mod pack. We'll click OK. We'll drag it across to the correct screen. This will install Dr. Sinister's mod pack for the correct version of World of Warplanes on your computer. And there's the new warning with an installer. Let's click Next. Now, you have the option to select your file here. Generally, if you've done this before, this will be the right folder, but of course, I've got a demonstration folder that we're using, so I'm going to go and select that instead. And here it is. Now, this will look for and check this folder is really a World of Warplanes folder. So it's beginning to do this already. It already exists. Would you like to install to that folder anyway? Yes, I would in this case. And this time, and unfortunately you can't enlarge this, which is rather annoying, we've got a series of mods that we can potentially install. So for instance, I happen to like colored tracers, potentially blue yellow by Farquhar. I may not want to do colored bullets, or I may. Let's say that we do. Do we want to do a camera mod? We possibly do. And so on and so on. Now there'll be an interesting one down here. Let's just go down a bit further until we find it. AI bot indicator. This is Who's the AI Bots. This being a mod pack, it's included the work of the person who created the Who's the AI Bots mod, and it has the files for it. We're going to select this so we can see what happens. Clearly, what that is going to try and do is install the same files that I manually copied a little bit earlier. Let's not do anything else. We don't want any of the race maps, for instance. Let's carry on. And this particular mod pack gives you the install option, and off it goes, and it says finished. There was no warning of what has just happened here, but I can guarantee to you that what will have happened, apart from a few more files now appearing here because we've run the mod pack, the installation of Who's the AI Bots that I did manually has been overwritten by Dr. Sinister's. And there's something that you're going to have to bear in mind. If you are using multiple modifications, some of which overlap, you're going to have to plan in which order you do these your installations. And probably you would start with, if you're using Dr. Sinister's, for instance, you would start with your Dr. Sinister's mod pack and install the items from that you want, and then subsequently you would install your mods manually, as I've demonstrated with Who's the AI Bots and the My Precious mods over the top. And if there are conflicts, you will probably then accept those conflicts and overwrite them with the newer files. If you do it the other way around, Dr. Sinister's will overwrite files that you have already installed without warning. This is not like Hackabase. Hackabase had an option to say keep existing mods. So Dr. Sinister's, apart from offering fewer features, although quite useful ones, also doesn't warn you that it's about to take away anything that you've already put under your res mods folder. So the keyword here is planning. Get the right installation order for your modifications. Well, for a long time I've preferred to use the Hackabase mod pack, but unfortunately it's been discontinued, as I've mentioned. However, there is a way that you can still use the Hackabase mod pack, and I predict that you'll be able to do this for quite a while because World of Warplanes won't change that much in terms of development. And therefore the files that Hackabase installs into your resmods folder will still work. So let's see how you might do that. Now you'll need a copy of Hackabase already. If you haven't got it, unfortunately you can't download it anymore. I'm hoping to get the very latest version from a friend soon. I haven't actually got that, I believe. However, I do have a version that should work here in my temporary folder. Hackabase World of Warplanes 2.1.10.0, so it's a little bit out of date of course, however it will probably still work, so we'll go ahead and try that. Let's go into this archival zip file, and we can run the executable from here, but just for convenience I'm going to copy it here. This is only for convenience, you don't need to do this, and we'll run this executable now. Okay, so we'll just drag this across onto the screen. We want to run it in English because I speak English. Takes a little while to load up. Here we go, I'll pull this across as well. Nice picture of a lightning. Next, accept the agreement. These are a summary of the changes. I'm obviously going to select my demonstration installation of World of Warplanes here, but generally this would default to the correct installation path if you've done this before. Otherwise you might need to select it. Let's browse. World of Warplanes. Next. It detects that the game client is wrong for this installation, but it doesn't abort the installation, it just says, would you like to proceed? So yes. Now there's a configuration file on my computer because I've done this before, therefore it's loaded up my previous configuration and suggested that I install these items. You'll see who's the AI bots again. You'll see some crosshairs, the grandpas, overheat markers, camera, from Dr. Sinister, funny enough, so I could actually just use the Dr. Sinister mod pack. Flight instruments, and here's one that I really like, ground objects by types by armor and color, orange for unarmored, red for armored. That will help you if you're learning how to attack the ground. I now know the difference, but you won't necessarily if you're newer to the game. So on and so on. And you can also install a whole load of skins here, which you may have been using and you may like. I've never used them, and of course they're not visible to anybody else in the game. So let's see what this is going to do. We'll press next. Here's the option to keep existing mods. Well, this isn't going to apply anymore because it's going to install in the wrong folder, as you'll see shortly. But this was the option that allowed you to run this mod pack last and then say, if I've already installed anything, don't overwrite it. Let's just go to next here. Oh, actually, we won't. Clean install, delete existing mods. We will actually just select that one for safety's sake, although it probably wouldn't have done anything in this instance, as you'll see in a moment. Install. And next. And finish. And because this is a version 2.1.10.0 mod pack, it has created a folder with a lot of infrastructure underneath it. And of course, this won't apply to your game. But as you saw with the installation of mods that we did manually a little bit earlier, what you can do now is copy all this, go to the resmods folder and go paste. And here we now have the option of replacing files in the destination or not. Now, the alert of you will have noticed that I kept who's the AI bots checked in Hackabase, and those are probably the files, I suspect, or at least some of the files that would be replaced. So let's skip those. And there you have it. even though that's an old version of Hackerbase, it should still work in your client as before. And I'm probably going to keep doing this up until such time that Hackerbase is so out of date that it breaks the game client and it's no longer usable. I predict that it will be usable for quite a while. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover here is Grandpa's collection of mods, and it's a collection because it doesn't have an installer. Essentially, you're going to have to either pick off Grandpa's archive and copy them into this res mods folder, as we did with Who's the AO bots a few minutes ago, and also the My Precious mod, or you'll pick off individual mods and do exactly the same. Information about Grandpa's collection of mods, at least in English, is on the NA forum, this page that's on display here. I'll put a link to this below the video for you. And here you'll find, for instance, a link to the all-in-one pack. It's not a mod pack because it hasn't got an installation file, remember. What I take to be a stripped-down version in some form or other of this file, the KISS pack. Keep it simple, stupid, I guess. Some of the mods also have their own individual download, such as this Bullets and Tracer mod. So we'll look at both taking one of the packs and an individual mod and show you what you can do with them. So now we're looking at the temp folder on my C drive again, and here's the all-in-one folder for Grandpa's. Now, you should do this with any file you download from the internet, but particularly this one, given its source, I'm going to scan it for viruses. That's come up clean, so let's go in and look at the structure. Let's ignore options for the moment, res mods. You can see that there's an old installation folder here, so clearly Grandpa's hasn't been updated yet. This is a fresh copy downloaded as I make this video. And you can see that there's structure here, and in theory what you can do is copy this structure and then drop it into the relevant folder 2.1.11.1 of your World of Warplanes installation, paste, and that's where I'm going to stop. Now, I suspect very strongly there's going to be loads of conflicts come up, and resolving those would be quite a lot of work. Again, it comes down to planning. I don't think this all-in-one folder is particularly useful, but if it is useful to you, you may use this as your main basis for your modifications rather than, say, Dr. Sinister's, and then add things in afterwards, overwriting selectively and carefully as you go along. If we just go back and look at that options folder, this is not particularly useful. There's not a lot here that tells me where I would install these. I'm sure I could work it out with time, but I'm not going to spend that time on it because they're not of interest to me. Sadly, under here, there is a README file, but I've already checked, and some of the links within this file are out of date, and the resources which would be critical to help you install these things are no longer available. So all in all, personally, I don't really recommend Grandpa's, but it is an option for you, and if it is the option that you want to use, then I would probably start by installing this by the method of manually copying the files and pasting them into the right place. That is this folder here, under your real World of Warplanes installation, of course, and not this demonstration one. And then installing other mods over the top, similarly, overwriting selectively to get the mix and match that you want. However, there is a mod that can be downloaded on its own from the Grandpa's collection, which I do like, which is this Bullet Tracer Zip mod here. Now, I've already scanned this file and it's safe. And in this archive, there's a folder called Bullet Tracer, and then there's one called Maps. Now, I searched my proper installation of World of Warplanes, which is here. Let's just go in there now. Res mods. This current folder is blank, so we'll go into the previous one. And it so happens there is a maps folder there, which I searched for and found. If I hadn't done that search, I wouldn't know where to put the Bullet Tracer mod. You don't want to copy this folder, but you do want to copy this one and everything below it. Let's just have a quick look. And there you go. So let's copy that. Now my real installation of World of Warplanes is here, so where would you want to copy this? Let's say this is the real folder, and at this point you would go paste, and your maps folder here would be overwritten. Well, there's a maps folder on my demonstration first installation of World of Warplanes here. So let's actually paste it here. And we're going to replace the files in the destination. Now, the reason there are replacements is because I actually picked off from one of the mod packs a modification for the bullets and tracers. You may remember that was from Hackerbase. We'll replace those files. And that now should have the Grandpa's bullets and tracers modification in its place. Now, I've shown you that because I wanted to demonstrate that if you're struggling with Grandpa's mods, then you won't be alone. It's not all that clear what you do to get them in. Once you've got the all-in-one file, you'll have to probably start with that and then overwrite it progressively with other modifications and not the other way around. If you pick off the individual mods that Grandpa offers for some of the items, such as that bullet tracer mod, you're going to have to work a little bit harder and find out where it is you need to overwrite. It wasn't this folder. It was actually this folder for that bullet tracer mod, and I only did that by checking my installation of World of Warplanes and working it out. So if you're struggling with Grandpa's but you really want to use a part of it, let me know and I'll see if I can help you. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about modifications. I hope you found that useful. Took a little bit longer than I expected, but there's quite a lot to modifications, especially if you have to install them manually. So I hope you found that of some value. And finally, before we wrap up this edition of Notes from the Control Tower, and if you've watched the entire video, you know I mentioned kill markers earlier on, and here's a resource, and again the link to this resource will be below the video, telling you all about kill markers. Which markers are used for which nation's planes. This part of it I find most useful. It tells you what you have to do to get each successive marker. So going from 1 kill or 1 ground target all the way up to 10,000 kills or ground targets. And some pretty pictures to show you what's going on as well. So as I say, the link to this resource will be below the video. It's from the Asia site. I don't think there are equivalents on the NA and EU site. But that won't stop you from being able to make use of this resource. And I hope that you find that helps. And there we have it. I think that's the end of this episode of Notes from the Control Tower, and I hope you found the information inside this episode of value. If you did, I hope you'll come and see my future content. But for now, this is the Noble Q, signing off.